is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name is Eben Jansen. The show is live, is broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park here in Johannesburg. We're also streaming live on YouTube, but our entire show is always available on our YouTube channel on demand. Today, Shirin Devani is back in the dock at the Western Cape High Court. We'll be live there for a little update shortly. Then we shift our attention to the Ebola outbreak, with fears increasing that the disease could hit South African shores within the next month. Fetal alcohol syndrome continues to wreak havoc in the poorest communities of the Western and Northern Cape. And we look at the winners of Africa's top engineering innovation competition. But first, let's get the morning's news from Katrine Malone.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrine Malone, and let's take a look at the morning's headlines. The World Health Organization yesterday warned that Europe would almost certainly see more cases of Ebola after a nurse in Spain became the first person known to have caught the virus outside Africa. In South Africa, surveillance and measures to monitor the virus have also been strengthened to keep Ebola from entering the country. The health department has also reassured that hospitals equipped to handle the virus have been identified and that so far there have been no reported cases within our borders. Ebola has to date killed nearly 3,500 people in West Africa. The trial of Shirin Devani, accused of murdering his wife Annie, will resume in the Western Cape High Court in Cape Town today. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges, including murder and kidnapping. On the first day of his trial on Monday, the British businessman sought to provide explanations to disprove claims he killed Annie on their honeymoon in Gugulethu in Cape Town in 2010. It's unclear who will testify today, as the state has asked that the witness list be kept private. Arms deal critic Terry Crawford-Brown is expected to wrap up his testimony today before being cross-examined at the Seriti Commission sitting in Centurion, Gauteng. Yesterday, he named ANC stalwart Winnie Madikizela Mandela as one of the several MPs who he says leaked information on the 1999 arms deal.
Any attempt by the Arms Procurement Commission to suppress the David Warren Plimpton report as evidence in these hearings would, I submit, place the Commission in contempt of the Constitution and in contempt of the Bill of Rights in particular. Further, should this evidence be excluded, I shall then consider whether to bring the matter at an appropriate stage to a court in review.
And Parliament's Powers and Privileges Committee will continue today with the misconduct inquiry of 20 EFF members of Parliament. The MPs won't be present after the EFF's withdrawal from the disciplinary hearing. Earlier, EFF leader Julius Malema questioned the credibility of the committee and requested that all charges be dropped.
We cannot, as members of EFF, be subjected to a disciplinary process because of a speaker who admitted publicly that she lost it.
All those top stories and more are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Thank you very much, Katrine. Now, the trial of British businessman Shirin Devani will resume in the Western Cape High Court today. The first day of the trial was marked by jostling journalists, some gripping revelations, shocking footage of how his wife's body was found, and details of how she died. A large media contingent is once again at the court this morning. Devani is charged with murder, kidnapping, robbery with aggravating circumstances, conspiracy to commit these crimes, and then defeating the ends of justice. Now, for the latest, we cross to the Western Cape High Court in Cape Town to get an update from our very own reporter, Vanessa Puna. Very good morning to you, Vanessa.
Good morning to you, Eben.
Vanessa, do we expect one of the convicted murderers to take the witness stand today, as is reported in some media outlets, or is it being kept private completely, as the court is demanding?
Eben, yes. The NPA had made it very clear at the start of proceedings on Monday that the witness list will be kept private for fear of other witnesses who may be coming from abroad being privy to the information and the processes happening and unfolding in court too, where Shirin Devani is on trial for the murder of his wife Annie in November 2010. It has been widely speculated, though, that one of the former co-accused, who is now serving a life sentence of 25 years, that's Zwamadodana Zola Kwabe could very well be taking to the witness stand this morning. You'll remember that Mr. Kwabe had entered a plea bargain with the state in exchange to testify in this trial. He's been sentenced to 25 years and he is one of the hijackers involved in the murder of Annie Dewani. So yes, it has been widely speculated that he could be the second state witness to testify in this trial this morning.
Vanessa, some gripping revelations on the first day. That was Monday. Dewani pleaded not guilty on all charges, exonerating himself almost. What was contained in the rest of his plea explanation that was read out?
Well, I think the most shocking revelation that came out in his plea explanation on Monday had to do with his sexuality. It's been widely speculated over the past few years that Shrien Dewani is indeed gay and that this could prove a motive for having his wife killed, as is alleged. Now, in his plea explanation, the first point really, he deals with his sexuality. He has told the court via his legal counsel that he considers himself to be bisexual, that he had indeed had sexual interactions with both males and females, and this also includes the German male prostitute Leopold Laser, who has also been touted to be one of the state's witnesses here in the murder trial, which is now entering its second day in the Western Cape High Court. Mr. Dewani also in his plea explanation detailed his version of what happened on that fateful night that Annie was indeed killed, also explaining in detail how he had come to meet Zola Tongo, who was the driver of the shuttle taxi, and also explaining the various communication via cell phone as well as physical meetings between himself and Zola Tongo. So I think what has happened, Eben, is that the defence has fired the first salvo, if it were, sort of to dispel exactly what the NPA, or rather what the state intends to lead evidence on in this murder trial.
Vanessa, there's some video footage that were in court. Did you manage to see it, the footage that the family couldn't watch? What was contained in it?
Eben, yes, it was an emotional day. The video clip itself, played in court, all of 6 minutes long, was shocking to most people. Most haven't seen the actual footage of the VW Chiron taxi where it ended up in Elite Park in Khayelitsha on the morning of the 14th of November. The video shows the crime scene, and then it goes on to show the door of the shuttle taxi being opened and Annie Dewani's lifeless body slumped over on the back seat. It was indeed harrowing video material, and it would prove too much for Annie's parents to sit through and watch, the lifeless body of their daughter slumped on that taxi. Yes, court proceedings usually are very quiet, normally not people talking in court, but there was an almost audible silence, just as though the court just went completely blank for that few moments that we all witnessed for the very first time. Annie Dewani's body in that shuttle taxi. This was, I think, one of the most emotional and harrowing visuals of the day in the video shown by the state.
And quickly, finally, Vanessa, how do you read the body language of the family sitting opposite each other in the court on Monday?
The Hindosha family, that's the family of Annie, have held the press briefing on Sunday night. They've really just asked the media to respect them. They do not want to be interviewed for the duration of this trial. I can't call it tense at this point because I don't think that the families have sight of each other in court. They're sitting at opposite sides of the court. I do know that the Dewani family has so far refused to speak to the media. They do glance over to the media bench from time to time. But I think it's just all eyes on, from their point of view, supporting their son. And from the Hindosha family, they've indicated that they've been through torture for the past 4 years. And I think they're also just really wanting to get to the last fact of what exactly happened to Annie and how it came that she died on a honeymoon in Cape Town nearly 4 years ago. I've also just received confirmation that Shrien Dewani has just arrived at court. He has been taken through the back entrance of the courtroom, and we expect proceedings to get underway at 10 o'clock this morning. So far, I have not sighted either family arriving here at court yet, but it's fully expected that they will be at court every single day of this trial until it concludes.
Vanessa, thank you very much for that update. That's our reporter outside the High Court, Vanessa Puna, giving us an update on another sensational trial here in South Africa, the honeymoon murder in 2010 of Annie Devani. Now we move on. The Ebola crisis finally appears to have grabbed the attention of the entire world. Now that the disease has made landfall in the United States and Europe, it is seen as a legitimate threat. A rather sad idea if one considers that more than 3,000 Africans have already lost their lives. South Africa is now also on high alert, with predictions noting that the disease is expected to hit our shores within 3 to 4 weeks. South Africa has been placed on the list of countries most at risk, with a chance of more than 50% of the disease hitting our shores before the end of this month. President Barack Obama said on Monday that his government will develop expanded screening of airline passengers for Ebola, both in the West African countries affected by the disease and the United States. We ask, why all of the sudden media and social media concern now that Western countries are involved? There are always ethical and moral factors involved in these types of crises, from treatment right down to containment. To discuss these ethical human factors that are involved, we're joined by Professor Frans Viljoen, who is the director of at the Centre for Human Rights at the University of Pretoria. And then from Cape Town, we are joined by Dr. Colleen O'Carroll from Doctors Across Borders, an organisation that aims to treat disease in other ways than just with conventional medicine. A very good morning to both of you, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting us.
Professor Viljoen, if I can start with you, we'd like to talk about the ethics of an outbreak in this instance. And it almost seems as if lives in the West are valued more in the media, especially, than here on our very own continent. Like today, we see this crisis splashed all over the front pages because it's now hit Spain and the US. How do you read that? Why is that?
Yeah, I think it is really unfortunate. Clearly, if the first signs of an outbreak in this particular circumstances been in, let's say, Berlin, in Boston, or even Buenos Aires, even Bloemfontein, I'm sure the reaction would have been much more immediate. The interest would have been much more pronounced from the very outset of the epidemic. But I think we should also, to understand the picture fully, go back to 1976 when Ebola really first showed itself. And that is, it showed itself in subtropical, remote African villages in what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo, and more recently in Guinea and Liberia. And clearly, since 1976, there has been globally a neglect of taking seriously this disease, developing a vaccine, effective treatments. And I think we all can look back now and see big pharmaceutical companies, the public spending from developing countries, the World Health Organization. All of these entities clearly could have, should have, would have done better if that disease had, from the outset, pronounced itself in a clearer sense in the developed world.
Dr. Carroll, Doctors Across Borders, how do you view this scenario that's playing out now? We almost, it looks like this whole thing could have been avoided if we've got a disease that should have had a vaccine 20 years ago.
Well, there's no vaccine available. But our people don't stand a chance with the economic situation in these countries. The nutrient depleteness of these people is at such a low that they don't stand a chance to fight any viral invasion of any sort.
You say no vaccine is available, but we see that Westerners are being treated with an experimental drug that has saved the lives of Westerners, while 3,500 Africans have died. We've seen that in the last month. Westerners are treated with an experimental vaccine that works. Why do Africans then continually have to die in their droves?
That's an exceptionally good question. Doctors Across Borders has a treatment program that is alternative, and we've used it very, very successfully in the Ivory Coast. We've tried for the last month to get into Liberia. We've been made promises with assistance from various different organizations to send a team in to use our program there to help the people. And we just hit blank walls at every turn. So that's a question we're asking as well.
The World Health Organization's been under fire for the way that they've been dealing with this outbreak. But let me ask that same question to Professor Phil Yoon on this. Professor, if you can give us your views on this experimental vaccine, why Westerners are being treated with it. They seem to recover once they get this vaccine. And Africans, we now see that this disease is almost at a stage where it's a little bit beyond containment now.
Yes, I think we have heard about MZAP that had been not approved through the full process of medical trials, etc. And that had been used, and I think there's another drug that had been developed in Canada that is also been approved by the Food and Drug Administration in the United States. And I think that ethically speaking, it is always accepted that for compassionate use, it is possible that a drug be used even though it has not been fully approved through the normal channels. And clearly this was done in this case. Ethically speaking, it is important that whoever receives the drug should do it and use it with full informed consent. So the person should know that there are risks involved, that there isn't a very clearly proven benefit. And in the particular context, those who argue that it clearly could have been used by the healthcare workers in the United States because these people would be able to give this full and informed consent. I think it is also possible for an ordinary patient to be informed and give this kind of consent. But I think at the bottom of the non-giving of this drug is the lack of availability. From what I understand is that there was a very limited quantity, and clearly that has just run out at the moment. So it goes back to that institutional systemic neglect of this disease over a long period of time.
I've got a question to the both of you, and I want to talk to you first, Dr. Carroll, in Cape Town, about the drugs. We saw drug companies, their share price went up by more than 5% once the disease hit the US. Are those financial considerations more important, it seems, than the lives of Africans?
Well, from the perspective of Doctors Across Borders, we value all lives, and the monetary implications of pharmaceuticals is a big thing that we deal with every single day in our organization. We use alternative medicine. We have a program that works. We've used it on Ebola. If we catch you within the first 10 days, we can definitely assist you.
Yeah.
But it's herbal, and patenting herbs, etc., is always a tricky situation. So as far as we're concerned, people are not thinking outside of the box. Once they start looking around for things other than pharmaceuticals, they'll realize that there is a plan, it is in place, we are using it, it is working, but nobody's opening the door.
It's a rather sad state of affairs. Professor Phil Yoon, how do you view that share price going up and suddenly the drug can't be made available, widespread, compassionate use? What is that?
Yes, clearly, that from a human rights angle, that is certainly problematic. And one wonders also in anticipation of the disease becoming worse, why perhaps further attempts had not been made to produce at a very urgent basis, more of this drug. But I must confess that I'm not 100% clear on the facts. But let me link this to, for example, other subtropical neglected diseases. Yeah. The clearest one is malaria. We need to say it that in the same time when tragically this number of people, 3,500 people died of Ebola, there continue to be, let's say, 300,000 people who estimated could have been dying of malaria. And again, it is a drug that does not yield these immediate financial benefits to big pharmaceutical companies, and need to be supported. The development, the treatment issues need to be taken on by other entities, one would assume, by public institutions that deal with this, and that clearly has not happened.
I think you need to write a letter to Barack Obama, Professor Viljoen, but let me go to Cape Town quickly and ask Dr. O'Carroll about the alert that's now out in South Africa and the WHO talking about the disease going global within the next 3 to 4 weeks, and South Africa being one of the highest risk countries for the disease to make landfall before the end of this month. What are your views? Are we ready?
Absolutely not. I think we're far, far too complacent. If you take into consideration that the US began manufacturing something like 160,000 hazmat suits, we have at our disposal, and this comes from the health minister himself, 600 disposable suits. 600 versus 160,000 hazmat suits. Does that make sense? No. So I don't think we're ready, and I think that more urgent steps need to be taken, more plans need to be put in place. We have been in touch with various entities within our government to offer our services, and we'll just wait to see what the outcome is.
What are your views on this, Professor Viljoen? How should we deal with this, and what is the role that South Africa then should take ethically and other considerations?
Yes, exactly. I think for me, one should find a balance between obviously being very vigilant. This is something that requires urgent action, but also guarding against overreaction and making this into something that causes panic and leads to negative consequences. I think we should take measures that are as effective as they could be, but as less intrusive as possible. So for me, the first starting point clearly is education, information, sensitization. There's been very little from our government and maybe from our civil society. I think that is where the emphasis has to fall, because from there other issues will develop. As far as the South African government is concerned, I think clearly, yes, the doctor is very, very correct. We have to take and be more vigilant domestically. But I think as an African state with perhaps one of the best public health systems in place, we should, I think, take much more decisive action in involving ourselves in the epicenter of the disease now. We should help with mobile laboratories that could lead to tests being done much quicker, which would alleviate pressure on hospitals, etc., etc. There are many things that we could do at relatively low risk to ourselves, because even if it is only for selfish reasons, because it is at the heart of the epidemic that this has to be turned around. And we should not sit back and say, oh, we'll wait for the first case to present itself here. Now we should, for our own interest and because it is the right thing to do, involve ourselves much more vigorously in those three affected countries, I think.
I thank both of you for shedding light on this emotive issue that is starting to develop, not just in our country, but throughout the rest of the continent. Thank you very much for joining us today, Professor Frans Viljoen, who is the Director at the Centre for Human Rights at the University of Pretoria. And then in Cape Town, we are joined by Dr. Colleen O'Carroll from Doctors Across Borders. I thank you both for your input this morning. Well, what are you saying on social media? Is it a wider human rights issue? I think it has become a wider human rights issue. That's my opinion. Let's take a look at some of your opinions here. The Miami Voice says there is panic and fear all over Spain. I hope it's something they can contain. Yes, America, time to catch a wake-up. Lee Keane says Ebola US sure has come at a dreadful time, right before midterm elections. Will we be able to vote? Just saying, yes, you will be able to vote. Really? Corey Rogers says, are we going to have to impose an automatic quarantine for incoming people from overseas? You can't do that, Corey Rogers. Trish Groves says, no details yet, but feeling a bit sorry for whoever sent patient home. May have seen 200 asymptomatic worried Africans the week before. Yes, the world is divided on this. We are divided, it seems. Paul says, Ebola joke, everyone laughs. AIDS joke, everyone laughs. Cancer joke is wrong with you. People die of cancer, our stupid society. That is Paul's view at Hitler's birthday. Not exactly the kind of tweet that we would like to put up. We apologize for that. But Let's take a look now at the front pages of the world. What is the world passionate about reporting on? The front page of El País this morning. Doctors in Spain hospitalized 4 more people and rushed to identify dozens of others at risk after a nurse was infected with a deadly Ebola virus, raising fears of contagion in Europe. Many European papers this morning reporting on Ebola, and the European Union has demanded answers about how the disease spread in a specialized disease unit. The virus has killed nearly 3,500 people in West Africa since March. Then we move along to the South China Morning Post. Now it appears students in Hong Kong government have reached a breakthrough in talks there. Students at the forefront of the pro-democracy protests that swept the streets of Hong Kong almost 2 weeks ago have agreed to hold talks with top government officials. The power of the people. That's very important there, isn't it? Before we take a short little break, this year's Hajj, journey to the Holy Mosque at Mecca, officially ended on Monday. And this amazing footage has been spreading all over social media platforms. About 2 million Muslims undertook this year's pilgrimage. It is one of the world's largest religious pilgrimages and attracts believers from as many as 163 nations worldwide. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. We'll be back right after this.
Maar ergens een kap. Ja, de bar bezig. Kom.
Hello again, welcome back. You are watching Newsroom on SABC News. Now, South Africa has the highest number of sufferers of fetal alcohol syndrome on the entire planet. In Dar, in the Karoo alone, 122 children out of every 1,000 have the syndrome. Miscarriage, stillbirth, premature birth and small birth weight are all associated with a mother's drinking during pregnancy. Now, from our studio in Cape Town, we are joined by Dr. Lizanne Kluter, Director of FastFX Board of Directors. A very good morning to you, Doctor, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Eben.
Dr. Kluter, why do we rank as the highest numbers in the world? What are the underlying contributing factors to fetal alcohol syndrome?
Eben, I think there are a number of factors. Firstly, when we think of the historical factors of South Africa, the fact that the DOP system was predominantly used in some of the farming areas, and the DOP system was about payment of people with alcohol. So people would get cheap alcohol, low-quality wine for payment. And when we look at the generational effect of that, where drinking then became an inherent part of everyday living and it became part of the culture, and that has been passed down through the generations. Now, on top of that, we also have to look at the effect of colonialism, and after that was apartheid. So it's a combination of ecological, economic, social and political factors, in addition to this imposed dependence on alcohol for people who are disadvantaged and people who are marginalized.
Well,
so it's a combination. It's quite complex, but it's a combination of factors.
What are your research numbers showing? Are people still being paid in alcohol in some parts of the Western and Northern Cape?
It's illegal to pay people with alcohol, so we don't have anything on record. But occasionally we do find farms where people, they're not strictly paid in alcohol, but the exchanges often happen in alcohol.
Yeah.
So people would receive their paycheck at the end of the month and then exchange the paycheck because they've bought wine on credit.
Yeah.
And so it's I think the forms of the DOP system have changed slightly.
Okay, the system is still in place in some form or the other, and it's still the enablers are still in place. But I want to move on and talk about the syndrome itself. Just what are some of the physical, psychological, physiological abnormalities and difficulties associated with FAS?
So the disabilities related to fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So when I refer to fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, it includes the full-scale FAS, which is called fetal alcohol syndrome. And then you also get individuals who are presenting with some of the symptoms. And some of the symptoms can be neurological symptoms, and other symptoms can be physical birth defects. So the picture that you see on your screen now shows the difference between the brain of a child with a normal brain and that of a child who's been exposed to alcohol prenatally. And you can see there's a stark difference.
Yeah.
And that's what FAS are aiming to do, to prevent brain damage, essentially. So when we speak about the physical deformities, you may have facial anomalies or you may have organ damage. And the facial anomalies include structural features of abnormalities in the face, including short palpable fissures. You'll see the eye opening. You may see a flat mid-face. You may see a short nose, indistinct philtrum, the smooth on the groove on the upper lip or a thin upper lip. And when you think of the associated features, you may get apicanthal folds. You can see the folds on the upper lid of the eye. You may have a low nasal bridge. You may also have ear anomalies or a short chin, which we call macronathia. A combination of that. So when we look at the neurological deficits, a number of them including poor concentration span, language and communication difficulties, impulse control, which often lands children and young people in trouble and get them into contact with the justice system, intellectual problems, and then memory difficulties.
Have we reached a point in time where the government should step in and we should punish mothers who drink while they're pregnant?
While that may be the instantaneous reaction, we've done research in collaboration with FAS, and studies have shown that these mothers actually need support. So mothers would tell stories of being involved or being exposed to trauma or being part of a household where domestic violence is rife or carrying a child as a result of rape and incest. So I don't think punishment would be the appropriate action. But I do think government can support these women. So we have to get an infrastructure embedded in the health system where mothers can get the specialized services. And not only these mothers, but all women who have alcohol-related disorders. Secondly, I also think government can contribute to education, and I'm thinking of the curriculum of younger children. We should start preventing FAS, starting with the young children at a young age already. Then we also look at policy regulation. We need policy regulation to make sure that we get mandatory health warning labels on alcohol and all types of alcohol, even with low concentration of ethanol. And then the support structures that we provide to women should include the training of health workers. A final thing that it's not least important, but it's I actually want to emphasize that we should also train service providers, especially in the judge with the courts, where they get into contact with courts. So if they get contact with the criminal justice system, that the workers who interact with them have the skills to identify and diagnose FASD, so that we can follow appropriate channels to support these people instead of sending them to jail.
Well, Dr. Lizanne Kluter, Director of Fast Facts, I hope that we can get right on top of this, and you guys are doing fantastic work at Fast Facts in dealing with us, but the numbers are simply just too high. Thank you for joining us today. That was Dr. Lizanne Kluter talking to us from Cape Town about fetal alcohol syndrome. Very worrying in this day and age, and it's still a problem. Let's take a look at what you're talking about on social media. At SABC Newsroom, that's where we live, that's where you can interact with us. Andrea says, how does the controversy regarding Devani's sexual orientation impact his trial? You should be thinking motive. Andrea, motive. That's how it impacts the trial. Emi Casaletti Boalia says, what South Africans need to remember is the damage this Devani case did to the South Africa brand. We were on a high from FIFA World Cup, and then this. Murders happen in every country, my dear. Sia, SA portrayed as easy targets to commit crime. Not really. Jack Woods, Shren Devani is back in a Cape Town court tonight, or for day 2 today, rather, for his murder trial. Thank you for letting us know, but we're well aware of that, Jack. Are there any more comments on Shren Devani? Not at all. Well, let's take a look at our Facebook page then. The United Nations Development Programme has warned against the Ebola health crisis in West Africa becoming a socio-economic crisis. Then we also see that Parliament and Privileges Committee will continue today with a misconduct inquiry against the Economic Freedom Fighters members of Parliament. Then you can also read more about the former Irish President, global activist for human and environmental rights, Mary Robinson, who says more platforms should be created for women to play a leading role in coming up with solutions for the world's problems. You can find all of those stories and a whole lot more on our Newsroom Facebook page. There you see a picture of part of the team there. Time for us to take a short little break. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News.
Into Africa. This is Tanzania. The president is Mr. Jakaya Kikwete. Tanzania got independent from United Kingdom on 9 December in 1961. The population is more than 47 million people. One of the major languages spoken is Swahili. Monetary unit is the Tanzanian shilling.
Welcome back. You're with Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just have a look at the morning's headlines. The World Health Organization yesterday warned that Europe would almost certainly see more cases of Ebola after a nurse in Spain became the first person known to have caught the virus outside of Africa. In South Africa, surveillance and measures to monitor the virus have also been strengthened to keep Ebola from entering the country. The Health Department has also reassured that hospitals are equipped to handle the virus have also been identified, and that so far there have been no reported cases within our borders. Ebola has to date killed nearly 3,500 people in West Africa. The trial of Shren Devani, accused of murdering his wife Annie, will resume in the Western Cape High Court in Cape Town today. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges, including murder and kidnapping. On the first day of his trial on Monday, the British businessman sought to provide explanations to disprove claims he killed Annie on their honeymoon in Gugulethu in 2010. It's unclear who will testify today, as the state has asked that the witness list be kept private. Parliament's Powers and Privileges Committee will continue today with the misconduct inquiry of 20 EFF members of Parliament. The MPs won't be present after the EFF's withdrawal from the disciplinary hearing. Earlier, EFF leader Julius Malema questioned the credibility of the committee and requested that all charges be dropped. Remember, all those top stories are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. 12 African inventors, including 2 South Africans, have been shortlisted in the first Africa Prize for Engineering Innovation. The shortlist was recently announced by the UK's Royal Academy of Engineering and includes innovations in agriculture, nanotechnology, sanitation, security, as well as mobile applications. The shortlisted candidates will now participate in a training and mentoring program over the course of the next 6 months, during which they would interact with top business development and engineering experts. Now, to tell us more about all of this is one of the judges of the Africa Prize, Lisbeth Botha, as well as one of the shortlisted South African entrants, Ernst Pretorius. Welcome to Newsroom, guys.
Thank you.
Lisbeth, I want to start off with you. We've touched briefly on the background of this competition. Can you just recap the goals and the aims, what we're going towards?
Yes, the Royal Academy of Engineering in the UK came up with this idea to promote and create awareness around innovation and technological innovation in Africa. And they actually worked out how this prize would work, and they started promoting it, and they came up with a whole plan for it. So the whole idea behind the prize is to create this awareness in Africa for African innovators and engineers. And the idea is that they will be, they will get not only the money for their inventions if they are successful in winning or being one of the finalists, but they will also get mentorship, and hopefully they will create businesses in Africa, Southern Africa, and all the other territories where they are currently located.
When we look at Africa, are we looking at a goldmine of engineers? Where are we globally?
No, actually, there are a few pockets of very innovative engineers and very successful engineers in Africa. If we think of our excellent communication networks, those are and were built and innovated by South African engineers. But unfortunately, there are not nearly enough engineers in Africa that what is needed for this continent to be successful, both socially and also economically. Engineers, through the things they develop, the solutions they develop, the technologies they develop, they build communities, they build cities, they build countries, they build economies. So for Africa to prosper economically and socially, because it's all about solutions as well, we need a lot more engineers, and the Royal Academy, in that sense, is really doing something very useful for us to create this awareness and to promote engineering in Africa.
Now, Ernst, you're one of the top 12, let's call it, finalists in this prize, in this competition. Can you tell us a bit more about the work that you do and the invention? I see you've got it here in studio as well. To tell us, it's called the draadsitter.
Yeah, it was one of my colleagues that thought of the name. It's because it sits on a fence. It uses sound that that propagate through the fence to determine if somebody is tampering or cutting a fence. And I started developing it due to stock theft problems we have here in South Africa, and one of my colleagues had a lot of problems with that. And there's a lot of cruelty involved with that, and it kind of touched me. And at the end, I started working on systems, and at the end, this idea just came to me, and it works quite nicely, and you can protect your fence. You can determine if somebody is climbing through your fence or cutting your fence at vast distances. So,
is something like this already available for the public, or is it still in development? Where is this going?
Yeah, this is my first prototype, actually. We're busy with 10 other prototypes that we're planning to test in the field here in December, and then hopefully early next year we'll probably start supplying it to the public on the outside. So.
Now, your decision to enter this competition, and now you're one of the top 12 finalists, how does that feel being part of this? What are you looking forward to most?
Well, it's very exciting. I'm so appreciative of the effort that the Royal Academy of Engineering went through. It's a good opportunity for the product because just with the publicity, these last few days I was occupied just by answering correspondence. And at the end, in the past I used to be involved with the technical and design aspects of a product. And I'm going to have the opportunity, getting some guidance of fielding such a product in the market, successfully. So I'm quite looking forward to that. It's going to be an educational experience, and I'm quite looking forward to that.
Lisbeth, I just want to wrap with you. This is a UK-based competition. How do we ensure that engineers like Ernst over here don't leave South Africa and bring back all of that they learned back to our continent?
Oh, I think the whole idea around this competition is to develop the African engineers and entrepreneurs and innovators here in Africa. Most of the solutions that the engineers came up with for this competition are all grounded and local. It's solutions for Africa's problems, Africa's communities, Africa's cities. That doesn't mean that there aren't similar problems and solutions needed in other continents. But I mean, the Royal Academy, the people belonging to the Royal Academy, and also the mentors in our networks that we're going to ask to help mentor these people, are all over Africa, and we're going to help them be successful with their businesses here in Africa. And I think, having that opportunity, Africa is, for solutions, everybody will agree, Africa is the continent of opportunity. There's also a lot of growing markets and business in Africa. So I think it'll be very short-sighted for any of our candidates, to think that they can be more successful in other continents. It's really about the opportunities where their new inventions and solutions can have an impact right here. So this is where they will stay, and this is where they're going to be successful. So I think they're just going to attract more and more engineers from Europe and so on to be successful here, I think.
Well, thank you guys for joining us this morning, talking about the 12 African inventors, including 2 South Africans who have been shortlisted for the Africa Prize for Engineering Innovation. Eben is standing by with weather guru Paul Monare.
Yeah, Paul is not a drought sitter, as it were. He's always in one place or the other. Good morning to you, Paul. Welcome back from New York.
Thank you.
Now, just to put into context, last month, world leaders attended the 2014 Climate Summit in New York City with the purpose of paving the way and raising the political momentum for a meaningful and universal climate agreement in Paris in France next year. Now, Paul was there. He's just returned. Paul, was it another talk shop, or are we finally being serious?
I somehow guessed you were going to ask me that. I've been getting that sort of question over and over. It's like, you guys always having parties, you're always having talks and talks. But this one was quite serious, and we also saw one president, one head of state, already putting a pledge forward for climate change, and it was quite a big step. And businesses are also very interested, and I think it's really, now no more talks, now action is being implemented.
Tell us about the mood there. We see some pictures. There have been some big marches. Were you at the march, at the climate march, or were you with the officials sitting on the other side of the bench?
Unfortunately, I was with the officials. These are some of my colleagues all over the world that do weather presentations, and who are also meteorologists, and they were among the 310,000 people that were there around the Central Park in New York. Yeah, well, I was at the UN building at the time. I missed it, and I had just landed as well. So, I was there in spirit, but I wasn't really there. But it was pretty good. Everybody was out there, and everybody was fighting for climate change, and it was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, on these pictures that we're seeing now, Paul, were you auditioning in New York for a different channel there?
No, I wasn't. I was conducting an interview there with Jean-Pascal van Iepersel. He is vice chair of the IPCC, which is the intergovernmental panel on climate change. And we were talking about the effect of climate change on southern Africa, and he was explaining to me some of the things that we can expect, and it was quite horrific and quite shocking. Meaning, we really need to take these drastic measures. We have to take these ambitious measures to make sure that we curb climate change.
Because it's always the developed countries that are going to, or the developing countries and the undeveloped countries that are going to be the hardest. Because are we facing things like drought in the short term?
Yes, certainly. In South Africa, as an example, we are expecting that it will be quite dry. The rainy seasons will be much less. But then there's also a twist. Dry conditions that we expect, but when it does rain, we could also be experiencing severe rainfall. So we could experience flooding in very short periods.
The floods and the things we've seen around the country, some places. Finally, quickly, Paul, now it's all going to culminate in Paris in France next year. Are we going to see a workable solution and a way forward for the entire planet at Paris next year?
Yeah, I think so. After this, with His Excellency Francois Hollande taking the first step, because it's going to be in Paris. I'm sure he needed to take that step and say, $1 billion is going through, or however amount that he put up, that this is going through for climate change. I think everybody will take from the example and take a step forward. And we've seen many countries already implementing the carbon tax or the carbon pricing principle. So I think it's going to be a good startup and a good
we need to put money in the green bank and the green fund. But quickly, what's your message to the viewers? What should they be doing to do their bit?
Everybody at home, drive less. If you can walk to a certain place, do that. Don't buy plastic bags. Use less energy. Switch off those unnecessary lights if you're not using them, and use less energy. At the same time, we're using less fossil fuels, and we're getting a cleaner environment.
Get a bicycle. That's what Paul Monaro says. Thanks, Paul. Thank you for always bringing the good news and telling us that there's hope for our children. In the end, we're going to make sure that the world is a better place, or that at least not a warmer place. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show then repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a total rebroadcast 5 a.m. the following day. We also stream live on YouTube at that very time, with the whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel all of the time. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.